it landed so heavily on the rear wheels that it ripped the sump off the bottom of the engine. And there was oil everywhere, oil all over the back window of the car, and I just ground to a halt. And I came so close to what I felt was a moment where I could have died.
Quite traumatic.
It was, and I just sat there.
Did you get out and say, that's an amazing car?
Hashtag make green great again.
Yeah, exactly. Hashtag colours make cars, hashtag just drive it.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of RM Sotheby's Car Show, and joining me here in London are two RM car specialists, Mr. Will Smith and Mr. Felix Archer. Thank you boys for joining me.
Hello.
We're in the middle of London at the moment, notoriously terrible place to drive a car. Let's just imagine that we have got the opportunity of taking our favourite car, so your 996 GT3?
Yes.
996 GT3. You're going to go on a road trip. Where are you going to go? Or have you indeed already done such a trip that's memorable?
Best road trip I ever did was with my dad. We drove had a 964 RS from the UK to the Nordschleife and to Spa, and it was glorious weather, and we drove around the Nordschleife together in that car. But it was kind of amazing for many reasons. I grew up in that car, which we sadly don't have anymore, but he took me around the Nordschleife because he did the 24-hour race in 2006, so he knew it quite well, just on one of those public days. And then I drove it, and it was both terrifying and exciting and thrilling at the same time. Yeah. But yeah, that was just amazing. And all the roads actually surrounding the Nordschleife were actually really cool. And
Definitely.
The inside.
I was going to say that Nordschleife, gets all the credit and it's like the destination, but the roads around it are incredibly good.
Yeah. And very smooth.
Very quite fast through the forests.
German road surfaces, not like British road surfaces.
But I actually think that track you could drive almost anything and it feels thrilling. You could drive anything.
It's a funny place because you can drive it.
You did the 24 hours there.
Yeah, a couple of times. And the thing is, at the end of the race, having done a 24-hour race, you come away thinking, I really know that track now. I know every corner, every bump. You don't go for 3 years, you go back. It's like you've never been. You can't remember which way it goes. You can't remember where the next. Oh, well, that's probably just my feeble memory. But that's what I find. I haven't been for years.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I did a similar drive with my dad. Before I was able to drive, I was too young. There was a BMW 328, a pre-war BMW 328 celebration at the Nürburgring, and he and I, and me obviously as his passenger, did a dad and lad drive out to the Nürburgring and did a lap of the track and everything in that car, and that was very neat.
Cool.
How about you?
Well, actually, funnily enough, BMW 328s, right? So nowhere near as interesting a 328 as you just mentioned, but
you're talking E30.
I'm talking E36.
Oh, E36.
So my first,
connoisseur's car. If you know, you know. Car.
you know. I've always had a love affair for BMWs ever since I was a kid. My dad had them, and my grandfather had them, and anyway. So I've always loved BMWs. But the first time I drove a really cool BMW on a really cool road as a combination, that's just stuck in my mind. And it was in California. I was studying abroad at the time, and my girlfriend at that time her father had bought a 328 Sport E36 in green with tan leather interior.
Hello.
Manual. And basically...
hashtag make green great again.
Yes, exactly. Hashtag colours make cars, hashtag just drive it.
About a month into our relationship, her dad said, oh, you can just take this and drive it. And speaking to me. And I was 20 years old at the time and never really driven a rear-wheel drive BMW because obviously insurance-wise I'd only been driving around in lawnmowers in London. And we took it to this road, this beautiful road near a lake called Lake Berryessa, which is in the sort of near Napa Valley, kind of northern California. it looks a lot like south of France and very twisty technical roads. And we used to spend a lot of time up there because it was near where we went to university. And just carving through canyon roads in a BMW manual, rear-wheel drive, 328, green metan. I mean, I just felt like a rock star of the highest order. And I got pulled over by the police in the process.
For being too badass.
Being slightly too cool for school. And
baddest of boys.
I busted out my, do you remember you used to get a supplementary driving license? You used to get your driving license and then you had the paper bit of the driving license with it.
Yeah.
And I'd always get that out because it looks like an official document and show it to the American police, and they'd read it and just think, this is way too much paperwork for me to process, just slow down and stop trying to be a racing driver. But yeah, that was a really, really memorable drive. Very quiet roads, carving through mountainous sort of regions in Lake Berryessa, California.
That's nice. That's a good story. The question that I used to get years ago, when I was at Autocar in the 90s, I was a road tester, so clearly there was we had a weekly challenge to find places to go to drive cars quite swiftly away from the gaze of the constabulary. And we had two favourite places to go. And I'm now going to ruin this for local residents of these given places, because now people may swarm up there.
Because of all the people watching this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Your dad might go. If he's never been before, that is.
Yeah.
We used to go to a place called Kirby Moorside on the Yorkshire Moors.
Okay.
And a place called Crickhow in sort of Wales, Brecon area of Wales. At both of those places, absolutely unbelievable driving locations.
Really?
Like, yeah, I mean, that's the thing in Britain, because with it's small country, lots of cars, lots of people, particularly if you're in the southeast, and you just become a bit jaded and kind of like, you can't enjoy a car anywhere in the southeast of England.
It's quite hard.
There are parts of this country which are just A, stunning to look at, and B, absolutely incredible drive. And those two, I mean, Autocar were using those way before I ever worked for the magazine. But they had found these places and they were absolutely epic. Yorkshire's dodgy because of the sheep, the Yorkshire Moors.
The same with Brecon.
Well, same with Brecon. Yeah, you come over the brow of a hill and you suddenly find there's a sheep staring at you, and it all goes horribly wrong. I did. That was my first. So I've got so many crap anecdotes, haven't I? I've got my first week at Autocar, when you're trying to impress, first week in a job.
Yeah.
There was a group test of GT cars at Kirby Moorside, and this was because of the launch of the Maserati 3200 GT.
Oh yeah.
And we had a yellow one, left-hand drive, Italian plates that had come over from. It was the one and only press car.
The boomerang rear lights.
Boomerang rear lights. So the magazine's idea was that we get 3 other slightly different genres of GT car that are kind of designed to do the same thing. So one was a TVR Cerbera. There was an XKR Jag, an XK8
Oh, yeah.
R.
I was going to say maybe DB7?
No, a 996.
Oh, okay.
And bear in mind, first week in the job, the idea when you do a group test like that on a magazine is that it's not just one journalist's opinion. You all drive the different cars, and then you get together in the evening and you have a bit of a chinwag and say, well, and talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, I think the Porsche is good for this reason, and I like the TVR for that reason, and then somebody will then go away and write an 8-page article, but it's essentially pooling the opinions of the group.
Yeah.
And so we all had to drive these cars, and I jumped in this 996, silver 996 Carrera 2. Porsche Reading press car, set off down the road at Kirby Moorside, and I thought, well, I've got to drive this thing quite quickly, otherwise I can't really form an opinion. And the bottom line is, I was just going way too fast, and there was a brow in the road, and it was one of those brows where you couldn't really see what was on the other side, and I just hit it. Couldn't even tell you what speed I was doing, and the car got complete. You know, sometimes like a humpback bridge, and all of a sudden the road just disappears. On the other side, the road. Oh, where's the road gone? And it's way more than you ever imagined. And I hit this thing. The car got airborne, and it slammed down when it landed, slightly Dukes of Hazzard style. It landed so heavily on the rear wheels that it ripped the sump off the bottom of the engine. And there was oil everywhere, oil all over the back window of the car, and I just ground to a halt. And I came so close to what I felt was a moment where I could have died that I just sat in the car shaking. I had to turn I turned the engine off because it was knackered anyway.
It was quite traumatic, Peter.
It was, and I just sat there.
Did you get out and say, that's an amazing car?
And then the rest of the rest of the autocar staff were thinking, where's Haynes? He went off in that 911 30 minutes ago and he hasn't come back. And they had to send out a search party, and they found me sort of shaking at the side of the road going, I nearly died. It was awful. I'm so sorry. And they had to send this Porsche back to... And Porsche in Reading said that they had never seen the bottom ripped off. They said, this can't be done. You've done damage to this car that can't be done.
Yeah, you did very well.
You know, I have.
It's called a road test for a reason, dude.
It's called a road...
distraction.
I was nearly fired, by the way.
Really?
I had to absolutely grovel. I got called into a boardroom at Haymarket where the editor-in-chief, Steve Cropley, and the then editor of Autocar, Patrick Fuller, absolutely grilled me, telling me what a disappointment I was. How I'd let everyone down, including my parents.
Wow.
And that,
Wow.
I better not crash another car.
I've never had a grilling like that. Have you?
At work?
Yeah, professionally.
Well, Felix has
have,
never
yeah.
had a professional job.
No. I have.
He went from being... No, he did tell me that he washed up once. He went from washing up
I did watch
to
it.
drumming in a band to doing what he does now, which is of a slightly
Meteoric rise.
No, nobody really knows what he does. Meteoric rise.
Have I ever had a crash?
Well, yeah, like a really, really embarrassing moment at work that's required your boss to sit you down and reprimand you.
Did the rest of Amber Run sit you down and say, Felix, your drumming you're letting yourself down?
Do you remember once we got a sort of joint bollocking because we played a show and we had this guy who's still with them today, who was he's a sort of MD, musical director, who did our front of house as well. We played this really important show that was not a public show, it was a sort of industry showcase for all these TV people and promoters and pluggers and stuff. And we played, and I remember all of us coming off stage thinking, that was unbelievable. That was so good. And we got rounded into a room, and he is very, very honest, and he was like, that was an audio war crime.
Jesus Christ. What?
Like, if the ICC had arrest warrants for sound, that would be, you would be on the list. He was like, that was the worst thing I've ever seen.
So was it the playing and the singing?
Everything.
So this is reminiscent of Led Zeppelin at Live Aid, is it?
It's not talked about in the same way, which is a shame. Yeah. But yeah, that was bad. That was bad. That was really bad.
And yet you guys actually came off stage thinking it was amazing.
It was always the ones that you thought were terrible were actually quite good.
Well, that's what I felt in that 996. I thought I'd revealed a design flaw. I thought I'm going to get rewarded for this.
Felix loves the 996 probably more than any Porsche.
I love a 996. I love a 996.
Take one to Kirby.
The ugly duckling, isn't it?
Felix does occasionally appear next to my desk in the office saying, I've just found another 996 that's 13 grand
Yes.
and I'm contemplating buying it.
Yeah.
But you haven't actually gone ahead and done
No,
this.
it's that or a 190E. That's what I'm really...
Oh yeah, like in as sort of weird hearing aid beige colour as possible.
Has to be hearing aid beige, interior cloth,
Yeah.
auto,
Yeah.
ideally over 100,000 miles.
Yeah. They did a really cool, like, funky green,
Yep.
light green colour.
Yep.
that works well, I think. On
Yeah.
those. I like
Awesome.
them. They're effectively ULEZ compliant now because you can get an 84.
You can. They're
car.
hard to find though.
So next
Despite
year,
the fact that
next
they're
year your buying pool opens up to 85.
I know.
So that's
Oh, is this
exciting.
what's happening? Are you
I
waiting?
love them. I just think they're awesome. They made 1.3 million of them. Great.
You wouldn't be
Yeah,
able to find one.
I know.
in beige.
I
they're
know.
around.
But there's a lot of terrible ones.
You love 996s,
Yeah.
and they are affordable, in inverted commas. It is the ugly duckling, really, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
So that's quite an interesting thing. What cars shouldn't you like, but are actually brilliant?
I've owned 2 Z3M coupes over the years.
What do you call it? The Smurf
The
house.
Smurf house, clown shoe. Yeah,
Z3M,
Z3M coupe.
bread van.
Bread van.
Yeah.
And I've owned 2 of them. And they're quite a weird, awkward-ish car to look at because they don't look like anything else. But in a weird way, that's why I love them, because they look weird and they're funky. I think, and they drive beautifully, actually. So I think a Z3M coupe is like falls into that bracket.
You're right, but I do think that car has elevated to its quirky looks are also where that's the DNA.
It's
That's
now
the coolness,
collectible
isn't it?
because of it. Yeah, kind of. I think you can have that though, because look at like the Lancia Hyena, right? People looked at that for years thinking it was just atrocious, like a terrible Delta Integrale. But now they're like double the price of a Delta Integrale because they're kind of weird and they're funky and they're.
It's Zagato, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you think? Where do you stand on an SZ Zagato Alpha?
Love an SZ. Love an SZ.
Because it is an ugly car.
An SZ is
But-
ugly, but
It's kind of cool ugly, isn't it?
it's kind of got this sort of masculinity about it that I don't know. Yeah, I really like the SZ. I think it's a really cool looking car, and if I saw one on the street, I'd almost faint.
It's sort of like ugly cool, but like
Yeah.
sort of Adrian Brody.
Yeah, I've been described as ugly cool.
Or
Not for 20
Gainsbourg.
years, but
Yeah. V6 Espas.
Adrian Brody.
V6 of Spas.
Where did
Yeah.
that come from?
Well, he's quite a weird-looking bloke, but I suppose he's quite handsome at the same time. Serge Gainsbourg, people found him attractive. He looks insane.
Mickey Rourke.
No, in his early years, he wasn't too bad looking.
No, very handsome man in his early years.
But yeah, ugly cars that are cool.
Before I even posed this question, I ought to have crystallised a few ideas in my own head, and of course I haven't done that. Typical.
What about the Lagonda, Aston Martin Lagondas?
Oh,
Yeah, like if one of those rocked up outside here, you'd be like, "Who's that?"
I think that if you to park an Aston Martin Lagonda outside a London nightclub,
Yeah.
that's quite a cool way to
Yeah.
arrive.
Yeah,
Can't say I would particularly want to own one. Looks
No.
like one of those cars that would be hell on earth. The ownership proposition
got a good
would
one.
be miserable.
okay. The 400 Ferraris or 365 Ferraris.
Yeah.
Because they kind of divide opinion now, but now they've come back round. They used to be considered really butt ugly for years, and they're starting to get cooler, aren't they?
yep. 400i is a cool car.
Yeah. And
So my dad was a Citroen man, and he had a whole string when I was a child of GS and CX Citroens.
yeah.
And I don't know whether you class like a CX. Actually, it's a good-looking car.
It's quite a cool looking car because it's got like that kind of really flowing, long, elongated look to
Absolutely
it.
magic carpet ride.
Yeah, beautiful piece of paper.
Just what I still hanker after one of those. I'd
Didn't
love one.
Citroens of the 1980s have a voice thing that talked to you?
No, I'll tell you what did have
Renaults.
a voice. No, an Austin Maestro. Used to have a lady's voice that told you to put on your seatbelt.
Oh,
and things
really?
Like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Before people started smashing it with a hammer. But not because it was a lady's voice. I hasten to add. Sorry, I'm going to have to backtrack on that. Just the voice, a voice telling you to put on your seatbelt. Now I'm running out of ideas now on the ugly cars.
It doesn't stop. It sort of slowly peters out.
It does. Have you noticed? We start any
sort of-
segment.
It sort of just walks off stage slowly.
A bit like you did on that gig
Yeah.
with no applause.
Yes, exactly. Definitely silence.
Definitely silence. Well, gents, look, probably the place to wind it
It's
up.
been a great show.
So thanks to Will and Felix, and thank you everyone for joining us, and please join us again for another episode next week.